This is how you make the easiest and most delicious homemade bread rolls. They're light and fluffy on the inside, beautifully crisp on the outside, and to make this recipe even better, it requires absolutely no kneading. For this recipe, all you'll need is flour. Ideally, this will be a bread flour or a strong flour. Alternatively, if you can't find a high protein flour, all-purpose will work just fine. And then we're going to need 1 sachet of instant or fast action yeast and some cooking salt such as sea salt or kosher salt. Then start off by getting yourself a large mixing bowl. And then we're going to add in 440 grams or 3 cups of bread flour. Give that a good old whisk to remove any excess lumps, and then we're going to add in a whole sachet of instant or fast action yeast. Now a whole sachet is normally 1 tablespoon, or it is for mine anyway, so you may want to measure out 1 tablespoon to be on the safe side. And then add in 1 teaspoon of cooking salt. Now give all of those dry ingredients a good whisk to ensure it's fully incorporated, and before you say it, fun fact, no, the salt will not kill the yeast. Salt slows down the fermentation and helps with controlling it, essentially drawing moisture through the cell walls of the yeast and dehydrating it through osmosis. This is necessary for a controlled fermentation and is what we need when making bread. You're welcome. Anyway, next we're going to add in 330 millilitres or 1.5 cups of very warm water, and when I say very warm, I do not mean boiling water. Just add in hot water from the tap and you should be able to hold your finger in the water without any discomfort. If you have a thermometer, you're looking for 45 to 55 degrees Celsius or 110 degrees Fahrenheit. Just make sure it doesn't go over 55 degrees Celsius or 130 degrees Fahrenheit. Now using the handle of the spoon, mix in the water with the dry ingredients until there is no visible flour once you're done mixing. What you're looking for is the dough to be a sticky consistency, not too wet and not too dry. If you're finding the dough is too wet, add in a very small amount of flour at a time, and if it's too dry, add in a touch of water. Try adding in a very small amount of flour or water at a time, as you don't want to change the measurements and ruin the outcome. Your dough should look something like this. It should be sticky and unable to handle by hand. Now once your dough is ready, we're going to cover the bowl with a tea towel or something similar and let proof for around 1 to 2 hours, and we'll come back and see how we're doing. So it's been just under 2 hours and my dough is looking really good. Now I know it's ready because I can see it's doubled in size, has lots of air holes over the top, and it's wobbly like jelly. This is exactly what you're looking for. If yours doesn't look like this, don't panic, just leave it for another 30 minutes and come back and check on it again. Now that our dough is ready to go, let's start preheating our oven. For this recipe, we're going to set the fan oven to 230 degrees Celsius or 450 degrees Fahrenheit. For conventional ovens, 250 degrees Celsius, and for gas, it will be gas mark 9. Now I know this sounds high, but trust me, this is where you need it to be for the rolls to rise high. Then grab yourself a handful of flour and flour your surface well. Going back over to the dough, we want to remove the dough from the sides of the bowl. Get yourself lots of flour over your hands to help handle the dough, and then we're going to pull it away from the bowl and plop it down onto the surface. And now we're going to give the dough a rough shape to make it easier to cut into even portions. Just flour your hands again and start gently pushing in the sides whilst turning it. Press the dough down on the top to flatten it out and then tuck and turn once more. And then using a dough cutter or something similar, you could even use a plate, mark out 6 sections that look to be roughly the same amount, and then once you're happy, cut into 6 even portions. You can see the one on the back left looks a little bit light, so if this happens to you, just tear off from a larger piece and add it onto the smaller one. Now grab yourself some baking paper, and now we're going to start shaping our rolls. Make sure that you have floured your hands again, as this dough is really sticky, and all we're going to do is pull the sides of the dough all the way to the back, pinching the dough as you go like so. Basically, do whatever it takes to get it into a ball shape. Then place the first roll into the center of the baking paper and add the others around the centerpiece. I'll show you me doing one more so you can understand how I'm doing it. And now that your rolls are ready, place a towel over the top and let them proof for a further 15 minutes. And whilst your dough is doing its final proof, you need a pot to bake the bread in. If you have a Dutch oven, this will work best and the method is the exact same. However, I'm just going to use a standard large oven proof pot. You can use any oven proof pot as long as it has a lid and it's a good size, as you don't want the dough to be pressing on the lid as it cooks. Now place your pot into the preheated oven for 15 minutes to heat up. It's now time to remove your heated pot from the oven and then holding the edges of the baking paper, carefully transfer your dough into the pot. Make sure that the baking paper isn't sticking to the sides of the dough. You may need to carefully push it away from the edges of the dough. Just again, be extremely careful as the pot is very, very hot. Now place the lid back on and then pop into the oven. Now for this recipe, we're going to bake for 30 minutes with the lid on to ensure that the inside is cooked all the way through, and then after 30 minutes, take the lid back off and bake for a final 10 minutes or until beautifully golden brown. Now for the final 10-minute bake, just make sure you're checking on it regularly to make sure that the top isn't burning. 10 minutes should be absolutely fine, but I would just keep an eye on it to make sure. Remove from the oven once it looks like this. It should be beautifully golden brown over the top and you can tell that it has a great crisp. Now you won't like this part, but before you get the butter out and start digging in, we want to let it cool for 15 minutes or at least 10 minutes if you can't wait that long. But the reason we do this is because the middle will be boiling hot, and if you cut into it without letting it cool, it'll be all gummy in the center, which you really don't want. Now I promise it will still be hot after this time, and after you've let it cool, you're ready to start cutting into your freshly baked rolls and tucking in. These rolls are fluffy on the inside and crispy on the outside. Just take a second to appreciate this beautiful crisp. I created this recipe so that anyone can bake. Baking can be extremely daunting for people who have no experience. But with this recipe, if you follow the measurements and the steps, you should get a perfect outcome every time. You can also use this exact recipe to create a beautiful bread loaf. Check out the video up here to see how. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please hit that like and subscribe button to see more recipes like this. My goal is to help home cooks become more confident in the kitchen by providing you with easy to follow recipes and cooking techniques. If you have any questions or any requests, pop them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer. And then that's it.